What was your business? Well, just obtaining houses, cars, the identification as you see, and any other financial things that went along with that, along with the distribution of drugs. And that was your business in Exquisite Empire? Exquisite Empire was just cars by themselves and also purchasing highline homes, for individuals who actually didn't have the means to go ahead and purchase those things, through legal means. What were the type of cars that you were getting? BMW 745s, Mercedes-Benz, Porsche Cayenne, trucks, on the average between $50,000 and $110,000. That was the value of the cars? Correct. How was it that you were able to obtain these cars? Well, what we did at the time was we used individuals who had credit who could actually purchase it. They had the credit scores and they had the amount of trade line that the bank would approve. Then we would take the money from the buyers who were actually going to be driving these vehicles, and we would put together false employment for them that would substantiate how much they had been making per year. So those forms together, we would get the loans. You would get the loans for vehicles? Correct. Who was making the payments on those loans? Well, it would be the individual who actually was driving the vehicle, as opposed to the individual whose name the car was in? Yes. Now, did you stay in just the car business and house business? No. Did you get into another business? Correct. What kind? Distribution of cocaine. When you say distribution of cocaine, what kind of quantities are we talking about? We're talking 20 to 30 kilos a month. And you say cocaine. What form was the cocaine in? Kilos. Describe for us what you mean by a kilo. What was the shape? It would be, kind of half the size of this right here and about double the width. That would be a tissue box? Yeah, probably about half the size here and probably about that wide. So it's a little more square than a tissue box? Yes. And that would be consistent with the size of a kilo of cocaine? Right. So these are like solid bricks? Correct. How much does a kilo cost? How much does it go for on the market? Roughly about $20,000. At what point did you sort of convert over from dealing in cars and houses to dealing in kilograms of cocaine? Do you remember what year that was? That was probably 2000, late 2002. How did you get into the cocaine business? Well, at the time the car business what I was doing had actually collapsed, so there was a lot of debt involved with repaying the individuals who had put the money up for those cars. So, what the gentleman I was working for at the time suggested, in order to pay these things back, that I take up a new line of business. Who was that person? Terry Flannery. And how did you get to know Mr. Flannery? I got a chance to get introduced to him by another individual named Jerry Davis, who when I first met Mr. Flannery, I was getting cars for. Did you call him by the name Mr. Flannery, or did you call him something else? I called him T, is what we called him. Now, you first got involved with T when you were buying cars for him. Is that right? Correct. What kind of cars were you buying for him? BMW and Mercedes. A lot of 7 Series BMWs. Do you know anything about what Mr. Flannery's business was? Yes, correct, I did. And what was the organization that he worked with? It's called the BMF, Black Mafia Family. And what was his position there with the Black Mafia family? He was one of the founders. Do you know who the other founder was? Demetrius Flannery. And did you call him Demetrius Flannery, or did you call him something else? I called him Meech. Did you do business with Meech also? Yeah, but not directly through him though, through his assistant. And who was Meech's assistant? His name was J-Bone. Do you know what his real name was? Chad Brown. Now, you start off with T or Terry Flannery? Correct. How did you get introduced to Meech Flannery or Demetrius Flannery? through Terry. Tell us about how you met him. Well, actually, one of the locations is called the White House, which at that time was probably across the street from where I have staying on Crystal Cove. This is right off of Evans Mill in Lithonia. I'm going to show you what's been marked as Government's Exhibit 1. Do you recognize that? Yeah, this would be the location I just talked about, the White House. And this is what you refer to as the White House? Correct. Do you know why it was called the White House? Well, because the outside was basically all white. And this is where you first met Terry Flannery? Correct. And what was the reason for you going over there? Well, at the time I was doing a lot of cars for one of his friends, and he said that he had told the gentleman, Jerry Davis, I was doing the cars for, that he needed a guy that could supply these vehicles as well. So it was for the purpose of actually getting started obtaining cars for Terry. And how long did you work in that? And that is getting cars for Terry Flannery. From 2002, kind of up to early 2005. Now, you said you actually started in the drug business in 2002. Were you doing both at the same time? Well, I should say, 2001 probably, because it was about 10 to 12 months before I actually started handling the drugs. So 2001 to 2005. All right. At what point did you learn that how Terry Flannery made his money? Well, he was different than from most of the people I was helping to do vehicles. We kind of kept whatever their business was separate, but, Terry was kind of upfront. He just basically said that he met a whole lot of car guys before, and, most of them claim to say they can do one thing and then they deliver for a while and don't deliver. And he just said, his thing's his drugs. He's in the drug business. He ain't going to sugarcoat it. And if I'm choosing to be in his business, then we're going to have everything out on the table and be open and honest about it. So he didn't cover anything up. So at what point did you become part of the BMF organization? Well, through a series of just probably maybe about 10 or 11 months down the line, and more so when the closure of my business stopped. Because at that particular point, Terry was like, well, you don't do any cars for anybody else. Once you start dealing in this cocaine business, there's no more doing a car for an outside person or anything else like that. So that would probably have to be, 2002 again through probably May. All right. So in essence, you started out with the car business with Mr. Terry Flannery, and you mentioned several times now that your car business stopped. What happened to your car business? Well, there was a couple of things. One of the things was that one of the cars I had delivered there was 12 kilos of cocaine found in one of the cars, the Porsche Cayenne vehicle. And another situation was that there was identity theft being done, and somebody had used Exquisite Empire to verify the jobs. So when the cars started getting taken off the road, they thought they were identity theft vehicles. And through further investigation, they found out that the cars did belong to individuals. But that's when the bank and wire fraud came in, because the true act of the fraud was that the jobs were made up. The jobs didn't exist where we had the employment for the actual purchases of the vehicle. So at that particular point, probably about 200 cars had to come off the road with an average value of about $50,000. And was one of those cars Terry Flannery's car? Several. I take it he wasn't very happy about his cars coming off the road? No, ma'am. Is that how you got into the drug dealing? Correct.